Now, it's unfortunate that we have to continue to remind people that incarcerated individuals have civil and fundamental rights that have to be maintained. Now, depending on what state you reside in, I want you to know that the Attorney General is the state's top lawyer and law enforcement official, and they have a responsibility and obligation to make sure that they are safeguarding their state from harm and that they are promoting community safety. Among the Attorney General's responsibilities, which also include determining whether a law enforcement agency has engaged in a pattern or practice of violating state or federal law. And that is very important. And so whatever state you reside in, you want to make sure that if you have someone incarcerated, someone that have been harmed, or they reach out and tell you that they're being harmed and stuff isn't right, or they're not getting their medication, or they're not getting medical treatment, you want to make sure that you do something to help them, because they still have a right, civil right and fundamental right. Now, in the state of California, the Riverside County Sheriff's Department is being under investigation, because last year, and I believe the year before, I've been following these cases where family members were complaining about their loved ones being abused or dying, and I'm going to say it again, dying in the jail systems in Riverside County Sheriff lockup or detention centers. So therefore, there has been an investigation that has been launched. Okay, and so there also it is now under investigation following a 2-decade high record of deaths of incarcerated persons within the county jails, among other disturbing allegations. And I believe the other another disturbing allegation was drugs. How were they getting these drugs? You know, where they were saying that some of these inmates were dying of a drug overdose. And so some of the families are like, well, how did they get the drugs in the prison, and what's really going on? So the families kept complaining, and now they are, the department is under investigation. And so the investigation is really breaking news. It really is, because it's under investigation of incarcerated persons within the county jails, amongst other disturbing allegations. However, the troubling allegations have been a concern for quite some time. And that is true, because I've been following these stories and these cases where families were complaining, and their complaints, and it's been ongoing for at least that I've been following the story, but a long time, and at least the last 2 years, I've been reading more stories about inmates passing away and family members wanting answers, and they were not getting the answers. So now it's at the state attorney general level to find out what really is going on in this, the Riverside County Sheriff Department in the jail system, in lockup. Okay, and so the Attorney General is now shedding light up on the Riverside County Department. An oversight committee was called for regarding the significant rise in deaths, as I told you, of incarcerated persons. However, that call was not answered. And see, the sheriff that was voted into office, because there was another sheriff, right? And when we had not this last election, but prior to the other election, Sheriff Chad Bianco stands by the department, stating this investigation would be a waste of time and resources, adding the department has nothing to hide. No specific examples of alleged misconduct have been disclosed at this time. But see, I have to beg to difference on that, because if family members are complaining that their loved ones have passed away, and when they're calling to get answers, it hasn't been transparent. Because I read some of these stories, and I kind of felt bad for the families that were crying out, asking for help, and never getting the answers. Or if they got an answer, it was something very vague. It wasn't transparent. And so they have a right to know what happened to their loved one also. Because again, and I want to say this loud again, shouting from the mountaintop, that incarcerated individuals have civil and fundamental rights, and they have to be maintained. Because this is the same thing with folks, ops and haters, and people that don't care about civil and fundamental rights of inmates that want to remain ignorant of what goes on in these prisons and jails, that they want to say, well, overlook it, or think that a person doesn't deserve, their civil right and fundamental rights or constitutional rights to be maintained, because they believe that they are guilty of the crime that they was convicted of, and the jury came back with a guilty verdict. And we see so many black men, and I'm keeping it real, coming out years and decades later of crimes that they didn't commit, that they were truly innocent of. And we see so much today of overcharging, over sentencing, and withholding evidence, and deceptiveness, and basically putting people on the stand that are criminals themselves, to testify on behalf of the government, to give them immunity. That we saw so much excessive immunity going on, people lying and they purging themselves, and nothing's happened to them. And even I call it paid witnesses, ones that been promised up and been giving things, like Section 8. Let's just call that out. That's one prime example. And then just to get them to get on the stand and tell a different story than they told before. And so we got to have some integrity when it comes to our judicial system, but not just our judicial system, but also our, prison systems. We do. And so let me get back to this, because I'm, saying my piece in between this. So let me get back to what this article. Now, contrary to what some of the general public may believe, incarcerated individuals maintain fundamental rights. They should, their rights should be maintained, but that doesn't mean that the people that are in these prisons working and the warden is making sure and overseeing that the civil and fundamental rights of incarcerated individuals is being maintained. Okay, so inmates have the right to humane conditions. Yes, they do. Humane conditions, because they're still human beings, regardless of what the crime they say they committed or they were found guilty of. And a lot of them in prison are innocent, but yet and still, they still want to treat inmates inhumane. And that's not right. And then we know that it's not necessarily comfortable. I've never been to jail, but I know people that have. No, it's not comfortable in jail. Would it be for you if your freedom is taken away from you? And I'm not saying that people that are truly guilty of the crimes they've committed, that they should not be held accountable. I'm not saying that. So please do not come over here and be like, oh, you just want to do what you want to do and get away. Because I've heard people say that, and that is absolutely not true, that our race wants to just get away with stuff. There are people in every race that don't want to be accountable. Let's keep it real. So this is not about this. It's about maintaining the civil and fundamental rights. And when that has been broken or breached or is under suspect, then an investigation needs to be launched for transparency to make sure that is not going on. And if it is, put some things in place and to correct those deficiencies. And if anyone's been harmed, there's got to be something done about it to hold the people accountable that have allowed the harming to be done. And families have a right to get answers, and it has to be transparent. They have a right to seek answers. They have a right to question what's going on. And if they don't get answers, they have a right to go higher than the people that they're dealing with to try to get the information from them. And when they're not willing to give it, then they have a right to go above their head. And so let's be clear on that, because still, again, people that are in the prison system that are alive still have a right, that they civil and fundamental rights have to be maintained. Now, inmates, and I'm going to go on, inmates have the right to humane conditions. Not necessarily comfortable, as I said, but working toilets. That's true. Working toilets. How many of you like to use porta potties that are disgusting and haven't been cleaned? You know what I'm saying? That's scary. You're at the fair, or you're at the lake, and you're up somewhere where there's a porta potty and there's not the actual built restrooms. You want to be able to go into have a clean working urinal or toilet. So they have to have working toilets, running water. I mean, you got to have running water and free from insect infestation like bed bugs and all of that, roaches and other stuff, and other hazards to human health. No one should be suffering, suffering from these things just because they're incarcerated. They're still human. And then inmates maintain the right to adequate mental health and medical care. So while they're in there, they still got to have mental health, because some of them are suffering, or many of them, from mental health breakdowns and trauma that they didn't get help for when they was a child. And that's why some of them actually are incarcerated, because of actions or things, they've done that led them to incarceration, right? Because they didn't get the adequate mental health when they was outside, but they certainly have a right to it on the inside. And then medical care, adequate medical care. Adequate medical care. No one should be laying up in a bed. I was told, a friend of mine who we volunteer together. Let me explain to you, or share with you what a good friend of mine said about the beginning of this week, because we're not into next week yet. She shared with me that a friend of hers called her and told her that her son was in lockup and he has diabetes and he's on the verge of losing his leg, and that or his toe or foot, but on the verge of it, and that they have him chained to a bed, handcuffed to a bed, but chained is the word I was told, and they were giving him his diabetic medication on an empty stomach. And we know that most medications have to be taken with food. And although I'm not diabetic, one of my late brothers, second oldest brothers, was diabetic, and he always took his medication with food. Okay, and so and I talk to other people that are diabetic that shares with me they have to eat when they take their medication if they're on medication. So giving an inmate who is diabetic his medication on an empty stomach is just a really, really bad idea. And from a medical standpoint, and I'm not a doctor or nothing, but I have common sense. I've taken medication before, like say you get sick and you have a really bad cold or whatever, and they used to give you medication for it, or you have an ear infection, or some type of bronchiolitis or bronchial infection. They give you medication and they tell you to take it with food. And so anyone would know that when you're taking medication, it shouldn't be done mainly on an empty stomach in most cases. Okay, I'll say in most cases. And so she was telling me this, and it was highly disturbing. And even the reason why he was locked up, because the girlfriend, she is a street worker, and she allegedly lied on him and said he was her pimp. And I was like, this is the most horrible stuff. And so he's been in lockup. And so with that being said, they have to have adequate mental health and medical care, because they still are human beings that have a right for their civil and fundamental rights to be maintained. And I won't stop saying that. Now, corrections and rehabilitation do not have to provide cutting-edge health care and access to care preventing cruel and unusual treatment, unusual punishment, which falls up under the 8th Amendment, which covers basic needs and care. However, prisons should take steps to protect inmates from known harm that may fall under inhumane. Now, and these name a few of the rights incarcerated persons maintain. Personal rights and fundamental rights of the incarcerated in California. Now, you need to look at your state and see what the laws are, okay? Because this is because the investigation has been launched in California, because it's California. But look at the laws in your state, okay? To include the right to attend religious services, right? They have a right, to practice their religion, as long as it doesn't harm anybody else, okay? And if you don't like their religion, then you practice your own and mind your business. And this is what we need to tell folks. It's always meddling in other people's business. Stop meddling in other people's business and get involved in your own business. Don't concern yourself with other people's business unless it's something that, is a problematic and that affects everyone as a whole, just your religion service, your religious beliefs is yours, and let them have their religious services. And prison officials must make reasonable efforts to provide for the spiritual welfare of prisoners. Spiritual welfare. So you have prison ministries where a ministry will go to the prison. They have been approved to go and preach sermons and do Bible studies with them. There are prison ministries out there, okay? And then, however, all personal rights depend on safety and security, which is true. There's got to be safety, there's got to be security, and it has to be maintained for the integrity of the other inmates and the employees that work in the prison system and overall general population, right? And any personal rights can be infringed upon if the potential for danger is imminent in the correctional facility, which we should understand that, right? Now, there is a remarkable difference. Let's talk about that remarkable difference that I am going to share with you. There is a remarkable difference between personal rights and privileges. There are conditions. Privileges may be considered entertainment, mental stimulation, and opportunity for social situations and personal growth. However, these privileges depend on behavior, a secure environment, and safety, which most of you all, if you are married to an inmate or you've had a family member that has been incarcerated, then you know that there's privileges for opportunity for social situations, right? And then even personal growth, like participating in classes to get your GED if you don't have a GED, to get your a degree now. They even have where you can go and where you are an inmate, but you can also take college courses to get a degree. There are people getting, degrees in the prison system now, taking opportunity for those things, but also having good behavior in order to continue those things or to do those things so that they're not taken away from you. Okay, because that's important to be able to learn to read and write if you don't know how to while you're in prison. So having good behavior will give you those privileges, and if you don't have good behavior, they can be taken away. So we have to learn some things, how the prison system works, before we jump on bandwagons and not know what's really going on or what we're speaking on. So anyway, however, suppose suspicions arise regarding any rights infringed upon or circumstance that could have been prevented within the jails and prisons, including alleged discrimination. Now, in that case, an investigation should not be a surprise when launched. It shouldn't be a surprise, because if people are doing right and doing the jobs they're supposed to do with integrity, honesty, and safety in mind, then there should not be a problem, and you're maintaining civil and fundamental rights of the incarcerated individuals, then you should not have a problem with that. And you shouldn't have a problem if an investigation is going to be launched. And also, you should be doing just like on your regular job. There never should have to be a surprise if Medicare came in and you are a hospital and they wanted to do an audit, a surprise audit. There shouldn't be no surprise, because if you're doing your job and doing it correctly all the time, no one's perfect. There may be some little things that come up. You might make mistakes, but it should never be something that's so grievous that harms other people and violates people's civil and fundamental or constitutional rights and things like that. So, as the general public watching from the outside, we must keep in mind the daily life of not only the well-being of the incarcerated, but the law enforcement agency as well. Law enforcement juggles several different situations and personalities, physical health issues, mental health issues, and confined quarters for the inmates, which could cause strife and other problems that may arise daily. Because if you're in a little small cell, and and that's, you got to learn to get along with your inmate, without violating the little space you have, and things like that. It's a lot, it is a lot, I'm sure, even though I've never been in there, but I'm sure it is, just by knowing people that's been in there and stories, and we read stories all the time. So, common sense tells us these things. We are not living in a box where we just don't know anything, right? So we learn things. So the department is responsible for ensuring with all due diligence the facilities are monitored as closely as possible. Now, with all due respect to the Riverside County Sheriff Department, let us focus not only on the negative light being shown, but on the positive impacts they have on our community. Okay, and they have made some positive impacts on the communities. So I'm not going to say that they have not, because there's also the good and the bad and the ugly, so, and the evil. So at the end of the day, we have to know what is right, and so there is no reason why any incarcerated individual civil and fundamental rights should not be maintained. So again, if you have someone in your state serving, prison time or jail time, and you have learned that they are going through some changes that are suspect, or feel like their rights have been violated, or a family member that has passed away in prison, or murdered in prison, or died, you have a right to get those answers, to seek those answers. And even if they haven't went to trial, and let's just say they are in lockup but they haven't went to trial, and something's going on, or they're being, they got hurt in there, or they're not being fed, or they're being mistreated, or they're being abused, or assaulted, you have a right to seek out and to ask questions and to stay abreast of what's going on with your family member. No family member should be left behind if they're incarcerated, and whether they're in jail, or the juvie, or prison. You want to make sure that you keep in touch with your family members and make sure they're okay, and things like that, because it's important that the incarcerated still are being treated with humanity, that they are not being treated inhumane. And again, I want to say this, that some people think that, because they have a problem with someone, or they don't like someone, especially these celebrities, and one specific celebrity, they feel like that person doesn't deserve, favor from God, that they don't deserve to be released once they've been found out that, they're truly not guilty of, violating any minors. Some people just don't want to accept the truth, and they will twist whatever words. So I want you all to not even get caught up in that. Just, keep praying. And because it's not up to us, it's up to God. And God has called this person, this attorney that's representing him, has called her. That's a calling on her life. And guess what? God is in the midst of it, and God's going to do just what he said he's going to do suddenly. And it's in God's time that suddenly, when I say suddenly, it's in God's suddenly time, okay? And we don't know what time that will be, but it's God's suddenly time. And God can do whatever he said he's going to do. And just like God loves you, God loves everybody else. He hates the sin, but he loves the sinner. And so with that being said, you all, please leave your respectful comments below. Let me know what you think about this video. Please comment. And then also don't forget to share the video. Give it a thumbs up. When I say like, a thumbs up, share the video, and subscribe to the channel if you're not a subscriber. And thank you all again to all of my subscribers and new subscribers. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram. Sometime I do come out with messages on there, live videos. I do go live at times on there, but I'm mainly on YouTube. But I do go live sometime, and my OitsSharine Jewelry, check that out on Instagram. That's StandupBcounted. And then don't forget to stick with it 6 weeks. Any mode or form of exercise 3 times a week, and you can break it up in 10-minute increments. So again, God bless you all, and I will talk with you soon.